Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of The Missing Method for Guitar books. And in this Reading the Riff number 8, I'm going to show you how to read the riff to Freddie King's I'm Tore Down. So let's get started. Now before we go too much further, I want to remind you to go ahead and download the PDF that comes with this video. It's in the section below. And that way you can practice reading the notes that we'll be talking about in this video. Tab is also included to kind of help you out and give you some idea of how the original version of this riff was played. Now this tune was first recorded in 1961. It's by far my favorite riff, my favorite blues song that Freddie King did. I love this one. It's been covered a lot of times, including by Eric Clapton in the 90s. And that's just one example. It was first recorded for Federal Records and was put out as part of a collection of songs for the Freddie King Sings album. At first it was released as a single. All right, so that's just a little background information on this tune, so let's get to reading it. Now first off, there's a lot of different ways you could read it if you just look at the notation. So for this video, I'm going to show you how you might read it to make it sound more like the original version. And I'll explain more of that as we go through the tune. So what you heard at the top of this video was the intro, which is also the last 4 bars of a 12-bar blues pattern, which is a good way to set up a song which is in 12-bar blues. We're in the key of C, which makes it easy to follow because in a 12-bar blues you have 3 chords, the 3 main chords in the key of C, which are C, F, and G. And so everything you play outlines those chords, meaning that those notes match up with those chords perfectly. So every time there's a chord change, that's where you change in the riff as well. Another thing you want to keep in mind is that all the eighth notes are swing eighth notes. And what that means is instead of playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, which is what you normally do with eighth notes, you would have the first eighth note is a little longer, the second one a little bit shorter. So you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, that kind of a feel. So here's what the difference sounds like. I'm going to take a look at just the very first part of the intro, which actually starts on the G chord. And so we start with the note G on the last string, 3rd fret, and then the rest of the riff follows. So I'm just going to do it as straight eighth notes first so you can hear that, followed by swing eighth notes just so you can hear the difference. So here's the straight eighths. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here it is with swing eighths. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can hear there's a pretty big difference between the two. And that swing eighth feel is what we're going to use throughout the whole song. Another part of this song that's interesting is the break section because it kind of extends the 12 bars. It kind of breaks the rules a little bit as well. And it almost feels like it's too much when you're actually playing it. But when the lyrics are included with it, it makes a lot more sense and you can see why he did what he did on that break. All right, so let's first talk about the intro. Now, if you've got that PDF, you can see that our first note is the low G, which can only be found in one spot on the whole guitar, and that is last string, 3rd fret. So in all the different ways you can read this, you're still going to start in that same spot. The next note is we jump an octave to a high G. Now, for our purposes, we're going to come up to the 4th string, 5th fret G. So we're kind of in this 3rd position here on the neck. And then the next note goes down to an F natural. So that's on the same string. We just go back 2 frets to fret number 3 on string 4. And then the last note of this riff happens on string 5, fret number 5, which is the note D. As you may know, there are several different spots on the guitar you can play some of those notes, but this is how we're going to do it because when the chord changes, that finger pattern remains the same. So here's the whole G section again. And we immediately drop to F. And so the low F has 3 ledger lines down. We go to the first fret of the last string. We jump to the octave, just like we did with the G, which is the 3rd fret on the 4th string. We go down to an E flat, because that's the lowered 7th note, so it gives it that bluesy sound. And that is the 1st fret of the 4th string. And then finally, we go to the C note, which is the 5th string, 3rd fret. And then from there, we go into the next chord, which is a C major chord. Now, the way that it's played typically is instead of coming up here to the same C you just played, we're actually going to jump all the way up to the 8th fret on the last string to play the C way up here. And then we would follow the same pattern. The next C is an octave higher on string 4, fret number 10. Go back to the B flat at fret number 8 on the 4th string, and then end on the 10th fret of string 5. So all together, and then that repeats again. And that gives you the whole introduction. And the nice thing is, once you know the introduction, you can just apply that same idea to the 12-bar blues that follows. And until you get to the break, it's just 12-bar blues after 12-bar blues again and again. So let me go through the whole introduction so you can hear what that'll sound like put together. So here's the intro. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we go into the verse. Now, the verse section kind of changes the accompaniment a little bit. In fact, in the real song, there are even more variations than what we're going to do today. Today, I'm just going to take you through the main idea, and then if you listen to the real thing, you'll hear where some variations and some changes have been made. So in the verse, we're in the key of C, so that means our first 4 bars are going to be based off the C chord. So that last thing we did up at the 8th fret is basically what we're going to start with, but there's a difference. The first beat is only a quarter note instead of 2/8. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and... So you can see it kind of gives you a little bit less energy by keeping that 1/2 a beat out of the riff. So it kind of gives you this kind of feel of being pulled back a little bit to get into the verse section of the song. So again, everything that follows is exactly like the way they do it in the intro, except for that first beat. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and etc. Now from there, we go to the F chord, because that would be the next chord that comes up in the 12-bar blues. We do that for 2 measures, and so that drops back down to the 1st fret. We do just like we did in the intro, except that first beat again, 1 note instead of 2. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we go back up to the 8th fret, 2 more times on C. And then from there, we play the last 4 bars of the 12-bar blues exactly like the intro. So we go back to the G, but now we bring back an extra note, the 2 Gs at the beginning. So it's 1 and 2 and to the F, C, C again. And then that whole thing repeats over and over again. And I'm going to play through the whole 12 bars so you can hear what it should sound like. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. that's really it, because you just repeat that over and over again. Now, as far as reading the riff goes, that's exactly what you'd want to do, just play that over and over. However, to play the whole song, there's also a break. And so to play that break, you actually play the C7 chord and then stop the sound. In fact, the way they do it is they approach it by a half step. So if you have a C7 here, you would just go to the B below it and kind of go into it like that. So you'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 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 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's a quick turnaround taking you back to the 12-bar blues again. So with that break, the way I played it is more like the recording, where you have the B flat into the C. On the tab that comes with this video in the PDF, you can also do it an easier way by just playing the C7 in first position, hitting the chord, and then holding that for 4 beats. Holding the rest for 3 beats, I should say. So we have the C7 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it does it 2 more times, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter notes. So same kind of idea. So you can kind of pick which way you want to play it. Both sound good. The one way is how Freddie King's doing it on the recording. This way is kind of a modified version because this C7 chord is a more common voicing for that. In fact, you could even do something like this, where you kind of start a half step below, just don't play the first string, just those 3, come up, strum all that, if you want to keep it in that position. And of course the C7 chord, in case you don't know, just get a regular C major and then drop the pinky on the 3rd string, 3rd fret. You have a great C7 chord right there. All right, so that explains the break. Now, again, you would just keep repeating the 12-bar blues throughout. And in this lesson, we're not really going to get into the solo. I do plan on doing that in a future lesson. But for now, we're not going to worry about that. But to wrap up this video, I want to show you how you could also approach reading this riff. So the way I showed it to you is how it's recorded. So they actually jump up to the 8th fret, go back and forth. But let's say you wanted to use this just to practice your note reading, and you could do that. So you would start in the same spot. In fact, I'm just going to use the introduction as an example, and you could try out the rest of it on your own. So you would still go to the 3rd fret of the last string. Now, if you're familiar with reading the notes in this position by doing like a Hal Leonard book, Mel Bay, or the Missing Method for Guitar Note Reading Series Book 1, then you'll know that the 3rd string is also the G. So you don't have to use a finger to come up here. You could keep it in open position. So you have 3rd fret, 3rd string open, F is in the same spot, but then the D would be open as well. So you'd have same thing, different region. The F is almost exactly the same, if not the same. So you have F, come up to the F, B flat, C. Yeah, same exact thing. And then finally the C would be a little bit different because you'd keep it in this open position, C on the 3rd fret. Then you would jump to the octave on the 2nd string, 1st fret. Come to the B flat on the 3rd string, 3rd fret. And then you would come to the G open. So C, C, B flat, G. And that's it. So you can keep it here. Also, as another alternative, you could play the C in a different spot rather than jumping up to the 8th fret if you really wanted to. So you would do the G in the same way, the F the same way, and then the C could be played here in 3rd position by going 1st fret, jumping up to the C at the 5th fret of the 3rd string, going to the B flat in the same spot, and then you would end, of course, on the G note instead of going to an open string, right here on the 4th string 5th fret. So it maintains that pattern without having to jump up here. But there is a slight difference in sound because on the F, you'd have to switch from 3rd finger to 1st. And if you jump up here, there's a slight change in timbre there. As opposed to and if you want, you could even do like an expressive slide just to give it some variety. Because you don't have to play it exactly like the recording. You want to make it your own, and that could be something you do to add a little of your own personality to it. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. Definitely practice reading your notes using this riff. That's the whole point of reading the riff. And of course, if you want to, just learn it from the tab, have fun with it. Enjoy I'm Tore Down by Freddie King. And be sure to check out our other Reading the Riff and note reading videos. We've covered a lot of different famous riffs so far, and I'm sure you would enjoy looking at those in a new light, because a lot of times you learn riffs either by listening to them or by looking at the tab. But if you can read it, you can figure out different ways of playing the same thing. And it's good for practicing note reading. All right, so that's all I have for Reading the Riff. So definitely give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed that video, and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate it when people do that. On top of that too, I'd invite you to come check out our website, themissingmethod.com. And if once you're there, you can see what kind of books we have. We have more than just one book in the note reading series. There's actually 5, each one taking you through a different part of the neck. And if you already know how to read some, but not everything, you can pick up whichever book you need to figure out how to read the entire neck of the guitar. So it's very useful in that regard. Also, while you're there, you can sign up for our mailing list and you'll receive a free ebook. So don't forget about that. Hope you enjoyed this. So keep practicing and enjoy the tunes.